A teenager befriends a rich old man. When he dies, the teen decides to keep the old man's phone with him. What happens when the old man tries to contact the teen with his phone? Will the teen continue to keep the phone or throw it away? Inside the woods, a young boy is running. The young boy is Craig. The year is 2003. Young Craig lives in Harlow, Maine. His father works at Parmelo Inc., which is a tractor and equipment company. He is a salesman. Whenever his father would exceed his sales limit, he would be given a bonus and the family would go out for dinner. It all stopped when Craig's mother died when he was a young boy. Craig narrates the whole happenings of how he met Mr. Harrigan. The first time young Craig and Mr. Harrigan meet in the church. While the mass in the church is on, the main door opens and Mr. Harrigan enters. After everybody sits down, young Craig is called onto the stage to read from the Bible. After his reading, he sits down next to his father. In curiosity, young Craig turns around and Mr. Harrigan nods at him with a smile on his face. That day, when he is in his room packing things, he hears a car enter their property. On looking from his window, he sees Mr. Harrigan downstairs talking to his father. Mr. Harrigan is a billionaire and the richest man in Maine. The reason for his visit is that he wishes Craig could read to him when needed. He even agrees to pay Craig $5 an hour. Young Craig agrees. He would walk to Mr. Harrigan's house 3 times a week to read to him. On reaching Mr. Harrigan's house, Craig looks at it in awe as his house is like a giant mansion. At first, he is a little intimidated by the gardener and the housemaid, but things soon settle down. Young Craig not only would read to Mr. Harrigan but also helps around the house with chores like watering his plants and getting the ice out of his main door. At night, he would see his father depressed. His mother's death affected his father the most. He is always hollow and sad, which upsets Craig as he could not do anything to help him. Craig always blames himself for his mother's death. One day, when Craig reaches Mr. Harrigan's house, he does not find Mr. Harrigan in the room where he usually would read. Just as he is about to snoop around, Mr. Harrigan calls him from behind. Craig startles and starts to apologize. During his time, he reads Heart of Darkness to Mr. Harrigan. At the end of it, Mr. Harrigan confesses that he reads the newspaper when he is alone. Craig thinks it is boring, but Mr. Harrigan educates him that finance, when used right, can be powerful. Craig, being curious, visits a nearby cyber center where he Googles Mr. Harrigan up. There are articles on him being ruthless and self-serving. It has been 5 years since he started to read to Mr. Harrigan. Teenager Craig and elderly Mr. Harrigan are now friends. During the 5 years, it has only been once since Craig took a break. Since Craig is now a teenager, he has started high school. A boy named U-Boat gives him, along with 2 new students, a tour of the school where he informs the trio of the do's and don'ts. Inside the cafeteria, Craig finds all the students using smartphones. He also finds a table full of iPhone users. He is shocked as iPhones have just been introduced in the market and is jealous of those who have them. U-Boat reasons that they are the popular kids, hence they have iPhones. One day, as Craig is on his way to his next class, Kenny Yankovich stops him. Kenny is a bully. He hands Craig a brown bag that has shoe polish inside it. Kenny orders Craig to polish his shoe. Craig declines and the boys start to argue. Ms. Hart, a teacher, walks past the boys. She watches as things get heated and intervenes. Craig saves Kenny from getting into trouble as he lies to Ms. Hart. When Ms. Hart walks away, the boys, too, walk in different directions, but not before Kenny threatens him. Craig returns home. He finds his father sitting on the sofa, waiting for him. Craig informs him that his first day in high school is okay. Craig's father is upset with the short reply. He tries to continue the conversation but stops when he realizes that Craig is unbothered. Just as Craig is about to leave, he returns and asks whether he could get a new smartphone. He is upset when his father indirectly says no. Craig continues his day. He meets Mr. Harrigan and starts his reading. During the reading, Mr. Harrigan tells Craig that he prefers people who work smart rather than hard. In his opinion, to get something for oneself, one needs to be ruthless. When Craig asks how Mr. Harrigan deals with bullies, Mr. Harrigan answers by saying he is ruthless to them. It is Christmas Day. The father-son duo starts to open all the gifts with smiles on their faces. Since he was a kid, Craig receives a $1 Devil lottery ticket from Mr. Harrigan 4 times a year. Valentine's Day, his birthday, which is in September, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. Craig's father thought Mr. Harrigan, being a billionaire, giving a $1 lottery ticket is cheap, and that if his mother was alive, she would have not liked it. During Christmas, too, Mr. Harrigan gives Craig yet another $1 lottery ticket. All the years, he did not win anything, and Craig thinks it will repeat. He is shocked when he wins $3,000 from the lottery ticket given to him. He is ecstatic. To add to his happiness, Craig's father gives him an iPhone for Christmas. That night, Craig calls Mr. Harrigan and wishes him Merry Christmas. Mr. Harrigan is happy when Craig calls. He also thanks Mr. Harrigan for the lottery ticket and informs him of his win. The next day, Craig and Kenny come face to face again. Inside the cafeteria, Craig flaunts his new iPhone. His friends are shocked yet happy for him. Craig sits down on the iPhone table where he stares at a girl his age. He and the crush start to talk. Soon after, his friends, too, bought new smartphones for themselves. Even though Craig is the only one in the group with an iPhone, they have fun. That day, Craig spends his whole day in the cafeteria with his new phone. One day, Mr. Harrigan asks why Craig continues to work for him even with the little wages he receives. Craig shares his love for books and how he feels complete when he is with Mr. Harrigan. Also, he is happy to spend time with Mr. Harrigan and that he looks forward to it every time. That night, during dinner, Craig tells his father that he wishes to buy a new iPhone for Mr. Harrigan from the money he just won. Craig's father is a tad disappointed as he thought the complete amount is going to his college fund, but he agrees. Since Craig visits Mr. Harrigan's house for the past 5 years, he has grown friendly with the gardener and the maid. On entering his house, Craig places the gift bag in front of him. Mr. Harrigan opens the bag and is happy with the intention. At first, Mr. Harrigan does not show a keen interest in the iPhone and thinks he should give it to his father, but after much pleading, he accepts Craig's gift. They both come up with Mr. Harrigan's nickname Pirate King. He then helps Mr. Harrigan to use the new phone. Days pass by. After the reading, Craig would continue to teach new features to Mr. Harrigan. In school, Regina and Craig start to grow closer. Kenny meets Craig and starts to bully him. He takes Craig's phone and starts to walk away before throwing it in Craig's direction. Craig catches it but is frustrated with Kenny's attitude. One day, Craig reaches Mr. Harrigan's mansion and he enters. While he is walking inside, he gets a call from Mr. Harrigan. Rushing to the room, he finds Mr. Harrigan breathing heavily with his phone in his right hand. His condition scared Craig and he calls his father. His father asks Craig to call for help. The help soon arrives and there, he learns about Mr. Harrigan's demise. Craig is devastated as he lost his old friend. At the funeral, Craig quietly sneaks Mr. Harrigan's phone into his suit. There, he is informed by Mr. Harrigan's associates that in Mr. Harrigan's will, he left Craig a total amount of $800,000 in his trust fund. Once when the friends talked, Craig informed Mr. Harrigan that he wishes to go to college and become a writer. At first, Craig could not believe it, but later, he is grateful to his friend. In the evening, he messages Mr. Harrigan and thanks him through the message. At night, Craig calls Mr. Harrigan's phone to thank him for his gesture. He regrets it soon after. The next morning, Craig finds that Mr. Harrigan sent him an odd text saying CCCAA. He shares it with his father. Craig's father thinks it is just a bug with the iPhone that sent the message. Craig still has his doubts. He revisits Mr. Harrigan's grave and leans his ears to his grave. There, he hears the word stand by, which startles him. He moves back and visits Mr. Harrigan's house. There, he talks to the housemaid who allows her to take an orchid. Craig enters the room where he last saw Mr. Harrigan and sits on Mr. Harrigan's seat. He thinks deeply and in the end, he decides to move on with his life. School is normal. Craig and Ms. Hart grow closer as she is always there for him. One day, Craig spots Kenny selling pot in school. When the school authorities know about it, Kenny is expelled. Winter dance day arrives. Craig is thrilled that he is going to the dance with Regina. After a while, Regina wishes to go to the washroom. Craig follows. When Regina is inside, Craig is attacked by Kenny. Kenny drags him out of the campus. After throwing some punches at him, Kenny accuses Craig of getting him expelled from school. Craig is brutally beaten up and left. Ms. Hart finds him. Ms. Hart knows Kenny is the one behind the beatings, but Craig does not confess it. After aiding him, Craig's father is called. The duo head home. That night, he angrily calls Mr. Harrigan. He is frustrated as well as sad when he tells him that he is afraid that it will not end, adding that he wishes Mr. Harrigan would be there with him to give him some advice. The next morning, Craig and his friends drive by and stop near Kenny's house. They find Kenny's dead body taken away with his parents crying in a corner. It is said that Kenny died after falling from his bedroom window when he was trying to sneak out. After his demise, Craig stays disturbed. He could not pay attention to anything else. Ms. Hart explains to Craig that Kenny's death had nothing to do with them. Craig still thinks Kenny's death has a deeper meaning. He thinks it has something to do with the phone call he made to Mr. Harrigan the night before Kenny's death. Thinking the phone is behind the killing, he visits the Apple store and upgrades his phone to a newer model. He hides his old model. Things are going well. Craig graduates from high school. The next stop is college. He decides to go off to college in Boston, where he decides to study journalism. During his time in Boston, he gets a call from his father. His father calls him to inform him that Ms. Hart had gotten into a car accident that involved a drunk driver. The accident has resulted in Ms. Hart's fiancé being in the hospital while she dies. The drunk driver is Dean Whitmore. Dean is not charged with the whole accident and is instead sent to rehab. Craig is unhappy and frustrated with the verdict. He returns home and uses his old phone to call Mr. Harrigan. He calls Mr. Harrigan and hopes that Dean dies. After a while, Craig learns that Dean died in the rehab shower. To get to its end, Craig drives to the rehab center. On reaching there, he bribes a worker to get more details about it. The worker tells Craig that Dean had swallowed shampoo and had shoved a piece of a broken soap bar. He realizes that the soap is the same soap Ms. Hart used. A note is found next to his body. The note has lyrics to the song Stand By Your Man, which was Mr. Harrigan's ringtone. Craig breaks down. He sees Mr. Harrigan's closet that Mr. Harrigan refused Craig to enter. The closet is a shrine to his deceased mother. He visits Mr. Harrigan's gravestone and apologizes for what he has done. The messages sent by Mr. Harrigan beg Craig to let his spirit rest peacefully in heaven and that Craig should live his life. After leaving Mr. Harrigan's grave, Craig visits his mother's grave. He begs for forgiveness with tears in his eyes. He then rushes to the town quarry, where he initially decides to eliminate himself but changes his mind and throws his old phone inside instead. He then quietly walks away.